Good evening. My name is Indrajit Gupta. I'm co-founder at Founding Fuel. Welcome to this inaugural edition of Talking About My Generation, our new Facebook Live show. For more than 8 weeks now, all of us at Founding Fuel have had a lot of fun working with the Mulls, Damodar and Harsh. You'll meet them shortly. Before I invite them, let me quickly share the thinking behind the concept. First of all, Talking About My Generation isn't just a weekly show. It is supported by a column on Founding Fuel and an ongoing conversation with the Founding Fuel community on our Slack channel. In this country, we love talking about all those wonderful things like the demographic dividend, how we're a youthful country with a median age of 29, and about how youth will power our country in the days to come. But how often do we really listen to our young people? And when I mean listen, I mean really listen. Sadly, not very often. Now, that isn't a very new phenomena, you'd say, and I agree. It was the same story when we were growing up as well, and I'm quite sure our children perhaps feel the same way too. But today, the pandemic and the lockdown has forced all of us to think very differently about the future, about how we live and work, about how we learn and engage as a family, at our workplaces, and collectively as a society. At Founding Fuel, we believe the time has come to bring in fresh new voices to our conversations about the future. And that's how the idea of an intergenerational chat took shape. A different theme every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. India time. At this stage, I should let you into a secret. We have a surprise package right at the end of the show. So remember to stay tuned for that. Let me now welcome Damodar and Harsh Mal. Hi, Damodar.
Hi, Aji. Good to see you.
Great to have you. Hi, Harsh.
Hi, IG. How are you?
Good. So Damodar joins us from Bombay, Mumbai, and Harsh from New York. So without much ado, over to the both of you.
Thanks, IG. Thanks so much for that wonderful introduction. And a big thank you to the Founding Fuel team for hosting us. It's great to see so many people joining us. And I hope that this discussion isn't restricted to just the two of us on screen, but to all of us, all of you who are watching. And after the show, as IG mentioned, we can continue a conversation on the Slack channel. I want to get right into it. And let's talk about a little bit about how we live in such extraordinary times. As individuals, citizens, consumers, we have all had to adapt our way of life to adjust to a certain new reality. But at the same time, this global pandemic that we are all fighting through has acted as a sort of unifier. And in many ways, my experience here in New York City has been similar to that of my friends and family all over the world. I have lived and worked in the US for the last 12 years, but I grew up in India, in Mumbai, and inevitably I find myself looking at that world through that dual perspective. And frequently I exchange notes on topics such as consumer behavior and brands and other such topics that both me and my father are passionate about, are curious about. And Damodar Mal, who has spent 2.5 decades building some of the biggest retail companies in India, helps me sort of bring some of my thoughts alive. And that's how the idea for the show, Talking About My Generation, took shape. So as IG mentioned on the show, we'll try and bring together our different perspectives, cutting across 2 generations, across 2 cities that don't sleep. We will talk about some of the changes that this pandemic has brought about in the way we live, in the way we work. We plan to surface and explore a variety of such themes. But as I mentioned, we don't want this conversation to just happen between the two of us. We want to involve all of you. So during the show, if you have a thought, if you have a comment or even a question, please drop them in the comment section below. this live show. We will also continue the conversation on our Slack channel once this live show is done. And of course, we'll share the link to that Slack channel with you and all other relevant details. So let's get started. Hi, Papa.
Hi, Harsh. Namaste and warm welcome. I see so many familiar names here. Thank you for joining us this evening. Harsh and I will pick topics, and these are topics that intrigue us. We'll bring different perspectives, observations, and experience into it. A small warning: often we agree, but there are times where we differ, and I think that will add a little spice to our conversation as well. Today we are talking about some changes both of us are seeing in the way shopping and brand choices have changed. That's right, Harsh.
Yeah.
And Harsh, as we settle down into this phase, the consultants reports, this is the season of consultant reports, and they started coming in on lockdown trends and how these are going to shape going forward. And I saw the approach which is similar to economic recession flowing in all these standard consultant reports. People will be worried, wallets are vulnerable, therefore people are value conscious, they will down trade in life. Some of them will start buying value brands and private label brands, etc. But you know what? It left me confused, because in the stores where I see consumer behavior, I was hearing this recession talk and I was seeing broccoli sales shooting up. I was hearing this recession talk and cookies were flying through the roof, and Saffola oil was booming. So that left me confused. Why are consumers not behaving the way consultants and brand managers expect them to behave? Can you help me? What are you seeing? Is it any different? Because I am a bit confused.
It's such a great question, and both of us have talked about this. And on my own, when I went looking closer, I found that maybe the answer has a little more to do with just the basic human nature and how, as people, regardless of where we live in the world, how we tend to adapt and react in times of heightened stress. So while this recession playbook that you mentioned, which is typically how an industry, whether it is in India, even in the US, will tend to react when there's a downturn in the market. But the consumer, the shopper, the individual who's walking into the store doesn't follow the playbook, right? They follow their basic human instincts. Am I safe and healthy? Can I look after my family in such an uncertain time? And what I am seeing is that rather than consumers going for those value brands that you talk about being price conscious, they are going to the shelves and picking off the familiar brands. These are typically big players in each category that are widely recognized, often readily available. And I think what the message that the shopper is sending us is that they feel that the threat today is deeper than merely financial. And therefore, even in our buying habits, we are seeking comfort. I think that's why we decided to call these brands comfort brands. I can give you my own example. When the lockdown started and I had to make a shopping trip, not knowing when next I'll be able to go to a store, but knowing that I want to continue my daily habit of having a cup of coffee in the morning. And usually my coffee comes from my favorite local coffee shop or a small local brand. I can show you, I have an example of one such brand. And the important thing is the size of this jar. Keep that in mind when I show you what I actually ended up buying when I knew that I had to stay at home for a long time. It was this.
Nescafe.
Yeah, this is the largest jar of Nescafe that was available at the store. And so I noticed that in my own shopping behavior, that when I was facing uncertainty, I didn't want to bother with the risk. I didn't feel like experimenting. And I found the largest jar of Nescafe, and I brought that home.
I must admit, such a wise thing to say, Harsh, that the cost is not money. The cost now is bigger in the mind of the consumer. The cost is bigger, and I would call it the fear of the unknown, the fear of uncertainty that all of us are facing, and therefore the economic recession playbook doesn't seem to be playing out. The moment you gave me that thread, this confusion in my mind started sorting itself out, because I realized that people were that purchase behavior of shoppers that I'm seeing in India was also going for recognized brands, and slightly reluctantly, even I started calling them comfort brand. Thank you, Harsh.
So let's dig a little deeper into this phenomena that we've identified as comfort brands, and I want to address it from three perspectives. So first one is what makes some brands better sources of comfort than others, and to extend from that, the second question is, as consumers, what makes us opt for these brands, especially in a time like this? And finally, it's the time factor, which is, are these changes that we are discussing, these shifts in behavior, are they temporary? Is it only because of present circumstances? Or are some of these going to stick? Are some of these behaviors, habits, going to become permanent? So, it seems like a lifetime ago, but as part of that same first shopping trip, when I picked up that jar of Nescafe, I also came back home with another surprise product, which was a pack of Oreos. Now, Oreos are sweet, delicious snack that are very popular, but to be honest, they had almost disappeared from my diet. But suddenly, in such a time, I found myself buying that pack of Oreos, which for me, what Oreos meant was this was something that had kept me company when I used to stay up late at night working on my assignments in college.
Such a great example. Oreo is a well-recognized brand, familiar brand. You're likely to find it in every store that you look for, and it hasn't changed. It lasts. Its shelf life is good. It hasn't changed in years together. So it reduces one variable when everything else is changing. And I'm guessing again for Oreo too, Harsh, you bought the large pack.
Yeah, but I'm wondering now if that wasn't the best idea.
It's perfectly normal. Oreo is a comfort brand because it is an ideal package. It is there when you need it, and it is there when there is pandemic around you. It is around to surround you with this feeling of certainty. My equivalent of Oreo here, and I too have an example, is this Britannia Bourbon biscuits.
Yeah.
Equally popular and my favorite in a long time.
That's so interesting. I think that what you mentioned about consistency is so key to a buyer, and the best brands give that promise to whoever consumes them, that promise of a repeatable experience, which becomes even more important in a time of social unrest. For our audience, I would love to hear from you about what are some brands that hold this position in your life that may be a source of comfort to you, or perhaps you found yourself turning towards in these unique circumstances. So I can give you an insight on the change in shopping behavior on people of my generation, for example. Before COVID, before the lockdowns came into place, people of my cohort, we were in the habit of looking up online reviews for absolutely any product that we wanted to purchase. And what that meant was that instead of taking face value, we were moving the source of trust to peer reviews, seeing what other people like and going off of that. In which case, the brand doesn't hold much stock in terms of conveying that trust. But once we went into lockdown, once things became so much more uncertain, maybe I didn't have the time, maybe I didn't have the emotional capacity to pour over all of those online reviews. And therefore, my source of trust became the brands, which typically tend to be these bigger legacy brands, or the ones that we find reassuring. And while I did miss my organic coffee, in the middle of a pandemic, it's okay. I'm not in the mood to experiment.
It's to the credit of great leaders who have fought over dozens of years, have built brands like these, that they make you and me across generations feel similarly reassured. While your generation is shopping online far more, even here habits are changing. I'll tell you what I've been seeing in supermarkets. And my favorite haunt is this large supermarket at a place called Prabhadevi in Mumbai, where I go. You know what I see? People are coming to supermarkets less often, about half the number of times that they would otherwise come. But when they're there, they're shopping a lot more. And they are in a hurry. Because going back to saying, I want to reduce my exposure, I want to reduce my contact risk in life. And when they're in a hurry, the equivalent of what you mentioned as peer reviews and ratings online is the back of pack information, is the best before date information. And when I'm buying familiar brands from familiar stores, I don't have to do that. I just just can grab the pack of the brand that I'm so familiar with, load up in my trolley, and finish my shopping trip. For household products, that kind of health and safety has a different meaning, because it's in the context of how we are shopping today. It's interesting, though, that the same behavior, the same dynamic is what we are seeing you in New York and me right here in Mumbai.
I think that's what's so fascinating about this time. Even though there's so many challenges that we're facing sort of at the societal level, in a way, the pandemic has acted as that sort of unifier for people, as we are all faced against the same challenge. And I find that in so many of these behaviors, the insight is that the human instinct is always to seek these sources of comfort in times of stress and uncertainty, regardless of where in the world you live or your own the environmental circumstances around you. I can give you an example which led us to the next insight, that maybe perhaps, Papa, I think nostalgia also has a part to play. My colleagues and I, our work routines have been completely upended, and we had a office ritual, which is very typical of people who work in Manhattan, where during lunchtime, you go down, you buy usually a salad from a local restaurant, bring it back to your office and eat it at your desk. Once we were in lockdown, everyone's working from home, but the meetings are continuing. We are chatting on Zoom, and we started talking about this, and I found it so funny, at the same time interesting, that you would think that, okay, if the salad is no longer coming from the restaurant, maybe it's being made at home. Oh, no chance. That's the food that we were all eating at home was so indulgent, so rich and delicious and tasty. Everyone talked about how all of these sweet and savory treats had invaded their diets. More interestingly, some of them had gone completely off of their normal habits and going after a brand that they wouldn't reach out to. For the brand, one brand that New Yorkers typically tend to avoid is McDonald's. And I had my friends and colleagues tells me that for them, when the restaurant industry in the city had to close down overnight, even though they are not loyal to the brand of the Golden Arches, they knew that McDonald's would be open. The brand conveys to them that yes, the restaurants will be open. They have the strength in their operations and a certain robustness to their supply chain to even fight through a challenging time like this. And people, even not people who don't consume McDonald's regularly, still know that about the brand. And I think that's to huge credit to them.
Yeah, I think, nostalgia is what you say. Nostalgia has a very different thread when you look at an entire generation here. And that generation, for that generation, the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata were uh, uh, were the thing that they would hang on to. And it reminds of a simpler bygone era. And, Doordarshan, that's a government-owned channel, did a brilliant thing playing on this. They just brought back the TV shows of Ramayana and Mahabharata from a generation back and aired them here. They looked a bit tacky, of course, in production values compared to today, but it fired the imagination of a very large number of people here. And in India, if something fires the imagination of large number of people, it becomes global scale. And these shows from one generation back actually set global world record kind of benchmarks of viewership in India. That's how powerful nostalgia can be in comforting. The story doesn't end here for me. A very interesting thing happened. The brand started advertising on these shows, on these nostalgia shows, and brand Amul, which is a very large brand here, as you know, did a fun thing. They were advertising on these shows, but they were not airing today's ads. They brought back the ads from back then, when one generation back, when these serials were being these shows were being aired for the first time. So the advertisers also started participating and building on the nostalgia trip. And since I mention it, I must say it Amul, for a large number of people in India. It touches the chord. It to me, for a very, very large number of people, it is a classic comfort brand.
That's so interesting. And I'm just going through some of the comments that our audience are leaving in the comment section, and they're so insightful. And these are some of the mentions of the brands are what I would call classic comfort brands. You have Maggie, you have Parle G, Hide and Seek. But beyond that, it's not just food and drinks. People are talking about the old TV shows that they turn to in such a time. My friends and I, we would get along online and watch old football matches, for example, which I think that really speaks to the heart of that insight about how nostalgia can be so important in a time like this. And certain brands that have played that role in people's lives are really coming to the fore. And, I can give you an example. I'm so grateful to the Desi grocers in the US who helped me tap into my source of nostalgia, my childhood treats. I'm giving away all my bad dietary habits in front of a large audience right now. But this is one of them.
Britannia.
Yeah, Little Hearts,
yeah,
which I absolutely love. And the other one, of course, you will know about.
Thumbs Up in Coke Country.
Yes. I'm so glad that I can actually get these, and I had these treats accessible during such a time, because for me, they were a huge source of comfort. So, Papa, what's your opinion? Can we expect some of these consumer behaviors to stick? Or, does this trend continue? Will legacy brands not only thrive, but absolutely dominate, gobble up all the market share, and come through this troubling time being the big daddies in the market?
Harsh, let me tell you, life is not that simple. Yeah. business strategy and business success is a lot bigger than consumer appeal. Yeah. So here is my little note of warning to you and young brand managers that big brands that are seeing a boom right now, they have to guard against complacency. While the emotional appeal of a comfort brand is very high, uh, there is another angle. Yeah, the customers' resistance to change, barrier to change is very low. Come, let me take you back to the same supermarket that I was talking about. Now, you're going there, you trust the supermarket, or even your e-grocery platform for your milk, for your veggies, for fruits, for your dal chawal, everything and everything for your home and your kitchen. You are in that store. Yeah. And now, when you are in the relevant aisle, the large pack of Maggi that is your favorite brand is missing. What will happen? This is a store. Are you going to go back? Are you going to go to another store? Are you going to go back and make a second trip to the same supermarket?
Probably.
No. Yeah, you're going to pick what is available. Yeah. So it's not easy just being desired. It's not. That's not sufficient. If you're a good brand, like good people, when you are desired, you have to show up. And if you don't show up, then this whole duality of desirability and availability comes into play. And brands that get both this duality right will win. And the other brands and their brand managers will discover that there is many a slip between good mind share and market share.
I see. Uh, I love that example of Maggie. It's, and of course the availability, which is so important. And Maggie has played that role in my life in so many different ways, whether it is, in boarding school days where it rescued me from the terrible dining hall food, or even now once we started tiring of all the experimental cooking and baking, Maggie was still there to rescue us from another round of washing up a huge pile of dishes. So I'd like to invite IG back so that we can take some questions from our audience. IG, I think you're on mute.
Thanks. Harsh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. It's lovely to see so many comments pouring in as both of you were kind of having that terrific conversation. But as some of you know, we've been having this ongoing conversation on the Slack channel as well. And we've received some interesting questions from our audience, wonderful audience today. So I'll pick out a few for Damodar and Harsh to respond. But at the same time, I've been kind of watching the time as well. I think we promised a half an hour show. We're running a little behind time, and I'd apologize to the audience for that. And we might need to take a few minutes more if that's okay with everyone, right? And whatever questions we can't possibly pick up this evening, we'll certainly pick up on the Slack channel. So keep them coming in. I mean, don't hold back. So one of the questions and comments that I picked up, Damodar and Harsh, was from Rajiv Himmat, who asked on the Slack channel, and for the sake of brevity, I'm going to paraphrase his question. He says, since the lockdown, his trips to the nearby supermarket have almost have reduced drastically, almost down to zero, right? One, because the malls, as you know, are shut, and the closed AC environment isn't perceived to be safe. And he says during this period, his relationship with the local kirana wala has actually increased. He's the guy who has stepped up and found a way around the lockdown rules to get his stuff home. And he's seen that across in other neighbors as well. And he has a second part to the question. He says, people like him are willing to sacrifice brand loyalty for availability, right? Will that have a long-term impact on some of the so-called strong comfort brands that you speak about, Damodar and Harsh. And finally, the third part, he says in his building complex, there are many people who started buying fresh foods and vegetables online for the first time. But they're not buying it from the likes of JioMart or Big Basket. They're actually buying it from local shops that are delivering through apps like Dunzo. What are your comments? First Damodar and then maybe Harsh.
Yeah. One thing Rajiv agrees with us, and let me pick that up first, which is desirability and availability. They play out, and it is easy for customers to switch from the favorite brand and grab what is available. So that I completely agree. I call this whole churn, if I have to use a culturally Hindi term, I call it manthan. And when a change happens and when manthan happens, you can get wish or poison as an outcome of the manthan, or you can get amrit or nectar out of it. I think those who play this, those who are alert, those who are savvy, those who respond to the change, will be on the positive side on the gain side of this churn that we are all seeing. And I think our entrepreneur retailers, our kirana stores, are a formidable force in India. They've always been, and we have seen them adapt. We have seen them adapt in sourcing. We have seen them adapt in the manner in which they are finding ways to service our stores, service our customers. And on the third question that you mentioned, people are learning to buy digitally. To me, whether you buy on WhatsApp or Google Forms, or whether you learn to aggregate your orders and pass them on to somebody, you are overcoming your hesitancy to buy digitally, buy remote. And it's a good thing. It's a habit change, which I call favorable. Today, it is going to the Kirana stores, but tomorrow, JioMart will also stand to gain because of this habit change.
Okay.
I can just add
Harsh,
something on that, the point of the habit change, and give you a little bit of insight from an American perspective, which is that over here, the talk is often about how this pandemic and the consequent changes have fast-forwarded a lot of things, a lot of such habits that consumers are now moving towards. So in terms of buying groceries, Nielsen this week released a report that said that once local lockdowns started partially lifting, 90% of grocery shoppers bought their groceries from a store within a 5-mile radius of their home, which is very unusual for American buyers, because Americans are very comfortable with driving longer distances to go to a store which might provide better value, or which they prefer. So that's already one behavior change. The other one that we might see is that the big e-commerce players over here have struggled to crack grocery. And what they see this as a huge opportunity, because if the consumer who until this point wanted really to touch and feel the produce that they were buying in their stores, but suddenly the entire sensation of touching and feeling creates completely other connotations. And as Papa mentioned, more people are turning to online platforms to buy even their groceries. This might be a huge opportunity for people like Amazon, Walmart, Instacart, Shopify to finally find some success in grocery retail online.
Great. I have a follow-up question on that for both Damodar and for you, Harsh, which is that when you speak about comfort brands, the image that comes up again and again is these large national or international brands that have a footprint and a relationship that goes over decades, right? I'm just curious, especially in the food space, fresh space, Damodar, right? Is there a role for small regional brands as well? And do you see them fitting into your construct of comfort brands?
Oh, completely. I'm glad, IG, you mentioned, because that is actually a flaw in the way our narrative appears. When we have a diverse audience, one uses these familiar brands that have large distribution, not just within India but globally, because those are familiar examples to give. But you are so correct. For the customer, there is nothing called brand size. For the customer, the meaning comes out of brand depth, brand relationship. What the brand meaning? What is the meaning that a brand brings? And if I'm a consumer from Kolkata, then for me the meaning is rich in something as dear as Mukharochak Chanachur. Or if I'm a Mumbai customer, then it could be Bedecker. So Bedecker is a comfort brand irrespective of its size. And it is so important that we do not miss the fact that it is not about size of the brand or the width of their distribution or the muscle, because in the city of Pune, Chitle is a bigger comfort brand than the little hearts that from Britannia that Harsh showed us. So absolutely. And when it comes to fresh food in India is still ruled by small and local players, for a reason that this whole frozen and chilled cold chains, etc., are not in the consumer habit or even in the supplier habit. And smaller players are able to react faster, and they did even during these challenging times, and they made sure that quickly the dhokla and chutney or the idli and chutney that you were used to buying from your neighborhood grocer fresh was available for that same grocer to deliver to you quickly.
I can tell you that it plays out exactly the same way, even in New York, where, for example, New Yorkers are very passionate about their bread, the pizza and the bagels and so on. And when local pizza shops, local bakeries and bagel shops had to shut down, these are often, sources of huge comfort to locals over here. What did people end up doing? They weren't suddenly buying the same product from the grocery store. Instead, they were picking up raw supplies and trying to make them at home. There was a huge surge in home baking. And while at the same time, they were responding to a call for help from the local bakers, who are often, much smaller mom and pop operations, and their loyal customers, the people for whom their local pizza shop is their example of a comfort brand. They were trying to help them through this difficult time, so that once things start getting a little easier, that source of comfort returns to their lives.
Right. I have one question which I'm going to combine. It's from our friend at Joburg. Damodar, you know her, Meeta Dulab, and Vijay Jain from Bombay also asked a similar question, saying that you both spoke about comfort brands. When you look at online shopping, and Harsh touched upon that when you spoke about e-commerce, grocery e-commerce as an opportunity springing to the fore, are the comfort brands also able to hold their own when it comes to grocery shopping per se? Online?
I can tell you from the American perspective that very early on, one of the things that all e-commerce platforms are facing is that these large pack so a few factors: large pack sizes, longer shelf lives, and often a lot of these products fall into these categories of snacks, treats, whether sweet or savory. Those were very rapidly vanishing, even from e-commerce shelves, if you can call them that. And so that phenomena cut across both in-store consumption as well as online.
Got it. Damodar, do you want to add something? I think Vijay Jain's question was...
I think whoever managed to rise to the occasion, and India is a big country. There were some places where comfort brand A had their factories, and they could make it available in that region. And there they showed up. Whether it was physical stores or e-commerce warehouses that exist, distribution centers that existed there. Whoever showed up was taken home. And people would first ask for the leading brand. And if not, they would quickly switch to the other. So it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
If you show up, you win. If you don't, you lose. But people are not blaming the brand for, there is no loss of trust as such. The people are forgiving that you're not available. You lose market share, you lose dhanda, and you lose revenue. But I don't think the comfort brands are losing trust if they don't show up on the e-commerce platform or on the shop shelf in a hurry.
Got it. Thank you so much. I know we've completely run out of time. I'd like to thank both Harsh and Damodar. It's been a wonderful session and a lot of fun too. But I have a question for you, Harsh. What's the theme for your next episode of Talking About My Generation? Can you give us a sneak peek?
Harsh, you're giving it away.
I can give you a little. I think we're going to continue talking about this theme of change due to current circumstances and the impact that it has had on all of our lives. But this time from the perspective of workspaces, specifically offices. And I want to take up the question of whether there are some lessons to be learned as to how we adapt in our workplace in this post-COVID world. Are there lessons to be learned from a generation of digital natives, which is Gen Z?
I have a lot to learn on that front. We're just crawling to keep up with this change on that front. I'm going to enjoy that discussion.
Yeah, we have the same phenomena playing out at Founding School as well when we interact with our digital natives. Wow, I mean, they can teach us a thing or two. So,
but for this show, IG, nobody stepped out of their homes. Nobody visited anybody.
Completely socially distanced.
Yes,
socially distanced. Yeah,
absolutely. We've been responsible.
Yes.
So I think what we're going to see is we've got to watch out for Harsh's column in Founding Fuel on Monday. This is the theme that you're going to tackle, Harsh, in your blog,
Yes.
and on July 20th. So do watch out for that, folks. And we'd love to have you join us again on Saturday, same time at 7:30 p.m. India time. And as I promised, there's a surprise, right? We have something coming up, which is a video, which will take a bit of time for my colleagues to share on the screen. We'll just wait for a few seconds. It'll pop up on your screen. Just stay tuned. What that video essentially offers you is a glimpse into some of the lighter moments. And there you have it, lighter moments of what went on behind the scenes at the Mull family as they prepared for this show. And it wasn't just the father and the son. Their mom, Sangeeta, who's a novelist, also was very much part of it. So take it away. What's this?
Since the promo has gone like that, should we also build in a signature gesture? Something like, hi Harsh, fist bump.
Acha.
Is that good, or is that movement पकड़ में नहीं आएगा इसमें?
The two-dimensional में it doesn't really come through.
ये better है. Okay, so I'm supposed to get a call. How will I get a call?
Okay.
Oops, hang on a second. Yeah, I will have to put the ringer on. मुझे मालूम कैसे पड़ेगा?
It's implied when you say hang on a second and put a phone to your ear, it's implied that you got a phone call.
Noise.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be a real phone call.
Yeah, I tell you, but anyway, for a
Director साहब ने बोला है. अरे क्या? Change the lines now, sir.
Stage fright over there. Mummy's in the frame.
Mummy's in the frame. Hello.
Is the audio coming through okay?
Yeah. How will we know if your audio? They will enhance the audio.
Okay.
So I'll call mummy to take a look and tell us.
When I say don't forget to send in all your questions. When I say questions, immediately see you soon. That's it.
Pauses can be clipped off. So, बैठ के edit करेंगे. Yes,
No, I'm saying if it's such a short video, if you're removing sections, then it becomes very sort of interruptive.
उनको करने दो.
हाँ.
We'll try and do it as finished as possible. After that,
And while I was there, I couldn't help noticing a few changes in shopping behavior.
अरे क्या कर रहा हूँ मैं?
Yeah.
Thanks, Harsh and Damodar. We certainly look forward to your feedback and comments on the first episode and what we can do. And we'd love to see you back next week. And bye for now then.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.